Hey everyone, it's Ryan Mentz, and today's video I'm going to be editing this photo of a yellow warbler that I shot earlier this year. And I shot this with the EOS-1D Mark IV from Canon and their 500mm f4 lens. And it was shot at 1/200th of a second at f4 with ISO 160. So it's a clean base file to work from. It's low ISO, and with that camera, since it's only 16 megapixels, you kind of have to get it exactly right in camera because there's not much room to crop. And so when I'm looking at this photo, there's a few things that I want to definitely take care of in post-processing, but like I said, it's a nice file to work from. I really like the yellow and the blue color combinations. It makes the yellow really pop off. And I like the greens and the browns. It just kind of gives a sense of place. And instead of having like a solid background for those bird portrait shots, this one kind of puts it in its environment a little better, I think. And so I'm excited to see what it looks like once I'm done with it. We're starting off in Lightroom, and here I'm going to take care of the basic exposure and color adjustments. And then I'll probably work a little bit with the adjustment brush tool and brighten up the eye. And then from here we'll go into Photoshop, where I'm going to clone out this twig and the upper part of the perch. And the upper part of the perch is probably going to be the most difficult part of this edit, just because this branch attaches to this one. And whenever you have to clone out something that's already like up against another part of the image you want to keep, that's kind of the most difficult part, I think, for edits of this nature. But it's on a blown out background, and so like this twig will be absolutely no problem to take care of, and it'll be a little bit easier just because of that blown up background with taking care of the upper part of the perch. And then I'm also gonna play with sharpening up the eye a little bit and do a little bit of denoising. But other than that, this photo doesn't need too much extreme work in post-processing to give it a full makeover. It's a pretty solid starting point, so we don't have to do much from here. And I'm getting a spam phone call right now, so that's always perfect. Thank you. So we'll do exposure. No, we'll do temperature up because it looks a little too blue. And then the tint, we're gonna bring it down just a little bit. Probably not too much. Great, about there. So where it started, 26, 28, okay. So we're bringing it down 2 points. Exposure, for the most part, is fine. I don't want to bring it up too much because it's going to start blowing out the fine feather details because the yellow is pretty sensitive here. So I'll probably bump it up just a tiny bit. And then highlights, I'll bring those down, try to recover some of these details. I'll go 1:1 instead of 2:1 here. And just a little bit here. And shadows up. Up there. Whites, I don't think I'm going to be able to do too much with here. And blacks, just a tiny bit up, actually, rather than down. That looks pretty good. Vibrance, let's bring that up. And it looks like it's pretty much just going to affect the blue, so maybe around 20. And then give it a little assistance with some saturation, about +4. And from here, let's go ahead and dig with this eye. So I'm going to go to 2:1. Adjustment brush. And we're going to turn, well, I'm going to bring the brush size down first, and then turn on the overlay. And my auto mask is on. And I'm going to start painting this in. So since it's black, surrounded by yellow, it's going to auto mask very nicely. Turn off the overlay, and let's bring up the exposure. And the highlights. Shadows up, but I don't want to lose that black point with playing with the shadows. And that'll be pretty good for dealing with it in here. And we can see what we can do in Photoshop if it needs anything more. I'll probably even brighten up those catch lights even more in Photoshop, but for here it's fine. Maybe bring the black slightly down. because I want to keep that contrast with the really dark blacks and up against the bright catch lights. It'll make your eye really pop and look sharp without even doing real real exact sharpening. I guess what sharpening is it's micro contrast and adding contrast. So it's kind of sharpening without using an actual sharpening slider or tool. And that looks really good for Lightroom. And if anything, I think the bird looks a little bit green, probably because we dropped the green. Well, I guess we only dropped it that 2 points, so everything else looks pretty good as far as the tint, but I think the bird, instead of yellow, it looks a little bit too green to me. So I'm going to do another adjustment brush actually and bring up the brush size and turn on my overlay and paint the yellow, because I'm going to just adjust the tint on this a little bit. I'm going to bring some magenta into it and hopefully it won't look so green. And another thing is I'm filming this, so I got like filming lights on. It's kind of messing with my color perception a little bit, so maybe I'm I'm editing this totally off base, but from what I can tell it looks a little bit green. So I want to bring up the magenta on the bird only. And right about there, at least to my eyes right now, that looks a lot better. So from here, let's go ahead and move into Photoshop, where I'm going to take care of the cloning, and I'll denoise, and I'll sharpen this up a bit, and we'll be good to go from there. Alright, so we're here in Photoshop, and the first thing I'm going to do is denoise. So I use Topaz DeNoise AI, and I have a video all about that, and you should check that out if you are interested in learning why I love denoise AI so much, because I edit 5 different photos, I think, in there, 4 or 5 with denoise. And so we're going to do auto and update the preview here. And this is an ISO 160 photo, so it might seem kind of weird that I'm going to run a denoise on it, but it does, it softens up the background even more, I bet, and it's going to add a little bit of sharpening with this program to the bird itself, and I really like the look it always gives, so I run it on just about every photo. Alright, so here it is in Topaz DeNoise, and you can see the difference here. On the right side is the after, and then the before. So it does increase the sharpening, and then I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this on YouTube, but if you see on the autofocus grass blades, the before, it has a harder edge than the after. So that's what I meant by it does a little bit of softening, or it would do a little bit of softening to the background. It's very, very subtle, so I'm almost certain you're not going to be able to see the difference there. But let's go ahead and apply that. So I'm going to rename this layer to denoise, and then I'm going to duplicate it. And from here, I'm going to take care of the cloning jobs. So I'm going to take care of this twig and the upper part of the perch, like I said. And I'm going to use the lasso selection tool and just roughly get this twig here. And then go up to Edit, Content Aware Fill. And then it will magically disappear on us without any work at all. So there it is, and there it isn't. And I'm going to merge that layer down. Alright, so for the upper part of the perch, I'm going to first separate the upper part from the part I want to keep. And with that separation, it's going to make it easier to just select that upper part and remove it in the same fashion as I did with this lower twig. So to separate them, I'm going to use the clone stamp tool, and I'm going to add a little bit of separation here, or separation, a little bit of rotation here. And check it out. Yep. Okay. Alright, cool. So I got that separated up. And so we can, let's reset that and grab the lasso selection tool and grab this big bad boy. And then the same thing as we did before, content aware fill. And depending on how this looks, it might not be perfect right away. But we can always go back to using the good old trusty clone stamp tool. But that looks pretty good. We can adjust that a little bit better though, I think. So there it is, there it isn't. And we'll merge that down as well. Let's go ahead and rename this one to clone. Alright. Back to the clone stamp tool. I'll just clean this up just a little bit. And then I noticed there's these little cobweb looking things that I also want to take care of because they're not even attached to anything anymore. Alright, that looks pretty good. So there's the difference between the cloning of the twigs. Alright, so from here, let's go ahead and add a curves adjustment. And I'm going to lighten up some select areas of this photo. Then I'm going to invert this mask here, zoom in. And first thing I'll take care of is these catch lights. Maybe see if we can do anything about this iris, because that looks pretty cool that you can see the little difference between the pupil and the iris here. I'm going to brighten the brow. And then I'll move over here to the beak. Just give it a little bit of a added contrast. And then same idea with the wings here, just add some contrast to it by brightening up select areas and leaving select areas darker. And we'll zoom out. See the difference here. So another subtle little change that will improve the photo overall. Alright, so same idea here, except for we're going to go the other way with the curves adjustment and selectively darken just a few things. And first thing up is this thing that's been catching my eye. Connection lost. That sounds about right. All right. There we go. That's much nicer to me. And then I'm going to also selectively darken some things because that's going to increase the contrast and make things look sharper. And I'm going to make sure I'm painting in with white. There we go. And the difference for the darkening should be even more subtle probably than the brightening. Back here in Lightroom, and I'm going to add a radial filter so I can add some vignetting to the edges of this image and really draw your eye towards the bird. And so grab that radial filter, I'm going to reset it and drag it out. Turn overlay on so we can kind of see what it's going to be affecting. And then bringing the exposure down, I'm going to be looking up here at the navigator window because you're going to be able to see the changes when you're going too far with changing the exposure. Much quicker when it's a smaller image than when you're seeing it so big on the screen. And so I always keep my eye on that navigator panel to tell me when you can start seeing like a clear difference between the part you're affecting and the normal image. And so when I get to the point where I can't really tell that anything was even changed, that's kind of where I want to be because it's so subtle then. All right, so like the difference here, you can see that it's clearly doing something, but in the navigator panel, when you're just looking at the after, you can't really see the difference, but you are making a difference. So now that I've added that in, I see that this dark spot is getting a lot darker, obviously, so I'm actually going to go into the brush and erase and keep the flow down and auto mask off, and I'm going to just kind of paint this adjustment part of it out so it's not affecting, so it's not making this so much darker. So something like that. And actually I might just go in and I'm going to add a adjustment brush, and I'm going to actually paint this in, or lower the contrast of it at least. So something like that, just kind of not make it so heavy in the image anymore. And then I'm going to go back to the radial filter tool, and I'm going to make another radial adjustment, except for this one's going to be much bigger, and it's only going to affect the very outer edges of this photo. So let's drag this out. And it's still going to be weighted slightly to one side. And so again, I'm going to be looking at this navigator window. And this one's going to be more subtle. Just whatever kind of feels right when I'm looking up there. And I think that's about going to do it. Turn the overlay on because I want to make sure that the tail of the bird isn't getting affected too much. So that looks good. I think I'm about done here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the before and after. So we got the before here, and the after. We can bring it up side by side. And we can see that the blue and the yellow is still clashing very nicely. And so it really draws your eye immediately towards the bright yellow bird, which is perfect. And we added the vignette, so it draws your eye into that bird even more. We removed the distraction of the twig kind of just coming up out of nowhere, and then this top one that kind of separates the photo in two, which I don't like. I kind of wanted to be free-flowing throughout the image there. And then we toned down the high contrast of that dark spot in the corner there. And overall, let's zoom in here. It's much sharper just using denoise. I didn't even do any like real sharpening technique besides that denoise, and then I went in there with the curves adjustment in Photoshop, and I lightened some spots selectively and darkened some spots selectively, which kind of does a little sharpening on its own. And overall, just a really nice image that I'm proud of. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions about Lightroom or Photoshop or bird photography techniques, go ahead and leave your comments below. I'll take a swing at answering them. Otherwise, I got some more videos coming up, so please subscribe, stay tuned, and I'll see you next time.